Professor Steinbuck gave an awesome closing argument about the rationale behind FOIA, but the judge ruled against us. Agenda formation, he put in his order. Agenda formation is authorized, I think I got it here, Kevin, sorry about that. Agenda formation is authorized by Arkansas statute. The Arkansas legislature had granted municipalities the ability to manage their affairs through the adoption of resolutions and ordinance dealing with board agendas. The city of Fort Smith has accordingly adopted an ordinance and allowing for the removal of business. And then he goes on to say they did not violate FOIA. Well, long story short, we've appealed this case to our appellate, and we think it's going to be an important decision. The only question I have is, it going to get to the Supreme Court before we ask the legislature to do their job and say that you cannot usurp FOIA by setting your agenda. You cannot do this polling on two competing items that we do not have the right to see. So, you might think that's the end of the story, but I want to talk a little bit more about transparency here. What's the value of lawsuits? So, kind of a timeline, because it feels like what's happened here is while we lost the lawsuit, and I think we're going to win on appeal, we won on the transparency front. And here's the reason I say that. After we filed the lawsuit, about a week later, we held a press conference. Western Arkansas Transparency and Government Group and Citizens Against Unfair Taxation. We held a press conference. And we pointed out why it was wrong what the board had done. That they tried to jam this down our throats. We had no public input, no public discussion. They want to extend this tax 20 years. A tax for 20 years, without one single comment by a board member about, well, what about 10 years? What about 5 years? So we pointed some of those things out. The judge makes his ruling, and then about 4 days later after the hearing, the board requests a study session to discuss the February 8th special election that they had passed this ordinance. And in our lawsuit, we had asked that the court strike the special election day, ruled against us on that issue. On December 21st, they had their special meeting. They listened to us and they voted to stop the February 8th election. We've had various other meetings, and what they have agreed to do is to do several things. Number one, they agreed that there would be set up a special sales tax advisory committee with citizens being on that, who would get all the information on the tax, seeing how much was coming in, what they were spending it on. So that was a win for transparency. They also agreed, through pressure of the Western Arkansas Transparency Group and others, to shorten the period on both of these taxes to 8 years. We went from 20 down to 8. We went from 10 down to 8 on the other side. So that was a win. They agreed to put a freeze on sales tax. They agreed to put a freeze on raising our sewer rates. We've had historic raises over the last several years in Fort Smith. They agreed to freeze the rates for 3 years, and anything past that, they would not raise rates for our citizens any more than 3.5 years. So they're listening. We've got their attention, and we're having this dialogue. And I think it's all because of citizens like yourselves who got involved. Many citizens across Fort Smith got involved and said, look, we've got to do our business in a transparent manner, in an open manner. So that's that case. Now I want to kind of shift gears and talk, I think Ellen Kreth, who is the Madison County Record, she writes for the Madison County Record, is going to talk some about a case that is in Huntsville, which involves some sexual abuse against some minor students in that school system. I've been involved in 2 cases. One of them that I'm going to talk today is a FOIA case in which we alleged and got a court order on various Freedom of Information Act violations within the Huntsville School District. I think one of the things I want to say is many times that these FOIA issues come up on major issues that affect our lives, whether it's taxes, whether it's abuse of minors, whether it's in Jonesboro, that I'm going to talk briefly about that case. In Jonesboro, Arkansas, the library having vulgar and what I would information on the library shelves. I mean, just all kinds of various issues. But Ben Reitzel was a concerned citizen in Huntsville. We filed this lawsuit on his behalf. We spent another day in court, all day before Judge Martin, and we now have an agreed order. There were a couple of issues that they did not agree to that we tried to the court, but the agreed order. Yeah, Kevin, we can turn those lights back on if you like. In essence, we found over 10 violations of the Freedom of Information Act that involved this issue. The first one we found involved disciplinary hearings of students in which they did not give notice to the public. Just like we were talking about earlier. If you'd asked to get notice, along with the media, then the media should have gotten notice of this. They did not. A violation. We passed a law in 2017. Senator Sullivan was involved in that as a member of I think you were a state representative at that point, which requires that all public meetings be recorded. And thank you for that. That is a law that is so important. I talked about it a minute ago when I was able to go back and look at the video, and we have board members stating, we're no longer guessing about what they said. We know exactly what they said and how they said it. Michael Common's back here running for mayor of Centerton. We had we just tried a lawsuit on his behalf. Won that lawsuit, open records violation, but again, in the meeting we went to, are you recording this? Yes, we are. So they had various other instances of special meetings for the purpose of hearing recommended discipline of students. Again, no notice to the media, no recordings, or they say they recorded it, but they didn't keep the recording. You're required to keep the recording for half a year. They had a training session, same violation. Then we found, through FOIA, we found a series of text messages where board members were texting each other regarding the COVID crisis. They're doing our public business. They're text messaging each other about what to do on the COVID crisis with regard to our students. Because the law is in such a state of flux now regarding open meetings, while they would not admit that that was a violation, they did admit that they would not do it again. So that's why we want clarification on the law. We got into a tussle with them over various text messages that we received. They claimed that they were protected by FERPA, which protects students' rights of privacy, which we believe is very important. and the Arkansas Child Maltreatment Act. They made the claim that these text messages, if they gave them to us, they violated FOIA. Problem for them being is they had already given the same documents to the news media. Every document we asked for, they had already given it to the local news media. So we just said, we want the document. Long story short, the judge ruled in our favor on that. There were various text messages that had nothing to do with student privacy. The judge has ordered them to produce those. It was another violation of FOIA. In all of these orders, I insist that they get training. The judge in this case ordered training. You know, again, you see the history here. I mean, 10 violations of FOIA. So what do they do on the training? On day 61, Ellen Kreth calls up the superintendent and asks if you've had the training, and she says, "What training?" And, well, the court order says you're supposed to get trained. So the next night, I guess the lawyer fesses up and says, "Well, I don't think I told the superintendent that the court order didn't have training. So we're going to have it tonight at the school board meeting." So, you know, they spend little, if any, time. I think it was 45 minutes, and, you know, get some training. But, you know, government has to understand how important the Freedom of Information Act is. I mean, you know, where we're dealing with massive tax dollars, or we're dealing with abuse of children, you know, our ability, our right to know is so important. Okay, I think I've got a couple more minutes. I'm going to cover very briefly another series of cases that we filed in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We've got Bob Hester here today. I've known Bob for many years. We've worked together on many issues. Credit to Jonesboro, Arkansas. I mean, Bob just knows what's going on, and we appreciate you, Bob. Thanks for coming over today. We filed a lawsuit for Amanda Eskew. What had happened was there were several books in the children's section that she felt like were in the Jonesboro Craighead Library that were harmful to minors and contained nudity, although, you know, they argued that point. No matter what you feel about it, I know that the local, I said, you know, if you got any doubt about whether these are pornographic in nature, then here's what we'll agree to this interview, but we just want to hold up a picture of what the content is. After seeing the content, they declined to put the content up. But long story short, this was a FOIA case where she made a proposal to the board to create a review process and allow the board to make recommendations. Subsequently, there was a sensitive content subcommittee formed by the Jonesboro Public Library. Well, long story short, they met, this sensitive subcommittee met, violated FOIA, did not give notice to the media. I mean, clear and simple. I mean, give notice so that the public can come and see what you're talking about. We filed suit. They immediately, you know, after, for lack of a better word, trash talking my client, agreed that they violated FOIA and they would pay her attorney fees. And, you know, it's just, you know, I guess I would just call it, sometimes government bodies are just arrogant, and you know, and you've got to break them of that habit. And sometimes a lawsuit's the way to do that. Not to be outdone, however, several weeks later, the same Jonesboro Public Library refused to provide records to a local Jonesboro citizen. And not only that, they altered records that they provided, the back of a check. And so we filed suit, and you know, again, they immediately agreed that they violated FOIA by not providing these documents, and agreed to pay attorney fees. But, you know, it's, so sometimes you have to file a lawsuit and to show that, you know, we mean business and our rights are not for sale. Colonel Parsons is one of my heroes, Colonel Jim Parsons. He has fought battle after battle, and speaking of attorney fees, Colonel Parsons was ordered to pay, I don't know, Colonel Parsons, $10,000 in attorney fees for a case that he brought as a pro se claim, which was frankly just wrong. But Colonel Parsons is fighting for the rights of everyday people, and I'm so appreciative of him. Bob Gregory is also in the room. We've mentioned various FOIA freedom fighters. If you haven't had a chance to go to the Faulkner County reports, please do so. Bob is fighting the transparency battles and has an absolutely awesome website, the Faulkner County Reports, in which he tracks county government in Conway. Bob and I went down the lawsuit. We filed a lawsuit. I guess it's been a couple of 3 years ago now. I think that was a record request that they just kind of thumbed their nose at Bob. We filed suit again, an agreed order, and they admitted they violated FOIA. I wish we had more teeth in FOIA. I think that's something that various legislators have talked about. But anyway, that's kind of from a perspective of a lawyer and how the judicial process should work. And I think with that said, any questions? If you have any questions, we're happy to answer any questions. I think that's sometimes the best part of the process.